Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week, every day, every morning. We're answering them. And today is our audio day. So if you've got audio questions, we have some great experts here. So definitely throw your audio questions in. But of course, you can throw any technical questions in as well. If you are in Makana, of course, you can ask those questions. You can vote on the questions. You can chat about the questions. If you don't know where Makana is, you can go to officehours.global/join. If you don't want to do any of those things, it's okay. You can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. And you can ask your question 24/7. So anytime it comes up in your head, you can ask it, and then we'll roll it into either this show or the next show or the next couple shows. If you ask those questions, by the way, in Makana, and we don't get to them, we just send them back to you. You can bring them back in the next day. It's all built into the system there. If you put it into the QR code, we'll automatically bring them back in until we answer them. So make sure to ask those questions, one question per question. So don't ask a list of questions. We won't use that. And, usually we're doing very technical questions. If you have more philosophical questions, that's for Sunday. So you have to be in Makana and you have to watch on Sunday. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we have?
Roscoe Jones starts us off this morning from Madison, Indiana, and Roscoe says, for 5-hour translation sessions, what might be your recommendations for single-eared headsets? Comfort, clarity, and durability are top priorities. He wants a 3.5 millimeter tip ring sleeve connection, no mic, over the ear and under $150 US.
That's a pretty specific request there. The issue is most of the single muffs that are, I guess, lighter or other things. I mean, the ones that I've used in the past have had headset. I mean, those, when you talk about light headset single ear, I usually expect light headset single ear to have a mic. I don't see a lot of single ear. I'm just going to listen to them. That's an unusual request, is to not have a mic. I mean, usually what most of us would do to have a single ear is to take one ear, put it here, take the other and put it back here. So I don't actually have an answer for this. I don't know if anyone else does. But again, once you go to single muff, typically that is as soon as you go to single muff, that's typically something you're going to have a headset with, or a mic with. And again, I don't know if the ones that I get are under $150. If they're lightweight, a lot of times they're the Clearcom ones, and I think they might be just a little bit more. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the ones that are single ear do have microphones. I'd probably look at brands like EarTech. They have relatively affordable ones. They do have microphones, but of course you can plug them in. They come with versions with two 3.5 mil jacks on them, one for the microphone and one for the headset part. But you can, of course, just not plug in the microphone connector for it. Another popular brand is Pliant Technologies. They do have headsets that are similar to the ones from EarTech. There's also a company called Halter Technical. It's a relatively smaller company. I can't seem to find the single ear over the ear headset that they had before. I don't know if they've discontinued it or it's just not on their website. But another option as well is this Bayer Dynamic single ear broadcast headphone. It is $190 US and it's listen only. There's no microphone on it.
Good, Bill.
I'm surprised you were able to find even one, because it kind of fights the idea of over the ear generally means you want to isolate yourself from sound. So isolating one ear and not having the other ear, just a band and nothing on the other side, is a little unusual. Back in my misspent youth, I DJ'd a good little bit, and we used to have a single ear muff, but it was not attached to your head. You just hold it up for queuing records and put it down for the rest of the time that the song was playing. I just have never really seen that kind of configuration. No mic, single muff with a headband. But Mickey found something close, which really surprises me.
You could always just tear off one of the ears.
Nothing a pair of limb loppers will
do. Next question.
Next question comes from Andre Dole in Berlin. For an upcoming hybrid event in Germany, I need a professional closed captions in German and English. They shall be overlaid over the streams. Interpreters will be on site. Any recommendations for services and or how-tos?
Our own Robert Sababity is in Poland, and I think he covers a lot of Europe to do translation or interpretation and translation services. So I would probably take a look and reach out to him in our own Discord to find him there. I'm not sure, so he's come on and talked about it a little bit, but he's done a lot of this in that area. The hard part is finding German captioners. So we in the we're kind of spoiled in the United States in the sense that it's a law that you have to have captioning in all broadcast in English and oftentimes in Spanish. And so as a result, we have lots of captioners that can do it, and almost no other country does. And so it's much harder to find live captioners because we have to do it live. Live captioners in other countries is difficult. And a lot of times what people end up doing is captioning in English and then using some kind of language translation to just put it into the other languages because it's just very difficult to find those captions. So that's going to be your challenge, is finding a German caption service that does it live. There's lots of people that do it captions in German, but live captioning we have found to be difficult in German, French, and then impossible in things like Hindi and Mandarin and so on and so forth. So so that's going to be the first challenge. The second challenge is that of course, the captioners they don't need to be local, by the way, even though the captioners, the interpreters will be on site, the captioners don't need to be. So typically what we end up doing is using ICAP. This is so we have these what are called EEG 492s, and those are pieces of hardware. And what they'll do is they'll take the audio of the show, and you can have the interpreter, talk. You can embed that into the SDI or bring it in separately, and it will send it off to a captioner wherever they are, and they're going to be able to hear it as they caption. It's going to send it back to the EEG, which is then going to insert that caption into the line 21, the bank data, that then goes into the encoder, and most modern encoders will know what to do with that, and it will generate a captioning signal for the service that, assuming that your service and your encoder understand captions, then they'll be able to encode that properly. And so and typically what happens is it's some version of a VTT being created. It doesn't always have to be that, but being delivered to the service knows how to deliver that as captions, unless you are embedding it. And so if you're embedding it on top of the screen, so if you're not using a service that does that, then what you're going to do is need that hardware. That 492 can do open captions. So closed captions you can't see it unless you turn it on. Open captions is it burns it into the bottom, and then you need something that's going to display those open captions to burn them in. So that might be the other option that you have there. But again, I think your challenge is going to be to find German captioners. That's been the challenge that we've had in the past. It's not impossible. It's just very, very difficult because the ones that do it are really busy because they're the only ones that do it. Again, in the United States, English you won't have any problem with. You'll find lots of people that can do that. We use a company called Caption First in the United States. Now, if you look at AI Media, who merged with EEG, they may have other solutions for you. What they do is you can stream from your location into their service in AWS. They will have a captioner somewhere, and instead of using stenographers, what AI Media does is uses what we call re-speakers. So re-speakers, basically, they hear your show and they re-speak it clearly in a controlled environment with a good mic into AI that then puts it out. And the reason they do that is because it's about it's anywhere from, depending on who you talk to, 5 to 10 times faster to train a re-speaker than it is to train a stenographer. And so they have more people, and it's a little bit more flexible because one of the problems with captioning is, for stenographers, does the keyboard exist to do that? That's why we can't do Hindi or Mandarin. So re-speakers can do a lot of those things. And so that's another thing to look for is AI Media in general or EEG. They're going to be the solution for how it gets embedded into the system, and they may be the solution for some of the some of the actual translation. So take a look at that, but also reach out again to our own Robert Sababity for those answers. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York comes up next. My PTZ or Pan Tilt Zoom controller just bit the dust. I am in need of a new unit that can control multiple PTZ cams despite brand, can be powered over Ethernet, and is under $500 US. Thanks.
It's a pretty tall order. to have a controller.
We're getting a lot
that
of
does
specifics today.
I mean, a lot of times you're now looking at a software solution to do that. You're not going to be looking at a hardware solution to do that at that price, assuming that it's, especially if you need a new unit. I mean, if it's a new used unit, you might be able to find it, but I don't know what exists under $500. It's going to give you what you just asked for. You're probably looking, a lot of it has to do with what are the protocols that the cameras that you're using. Visca is a really popular one, but there's a couple other protocols that your PTZs may support. But you got to know what those protocols are. Then you're going to find out what the protocols are that of either the software or the less expensive hardware. But again, most controllers that I've worked with are over $1,000, so new. And most of them are in the $2,500 to $5,000 range is where I see most of the ones that I use. You may be able to find something that starts to approach that from Scarhoy, but Scarhoy would be probably the overall look of it. But I think that those are all still in the couple $1,000 range. But those are the ones that a lot of folks use for when they're buying a non-name brand solution. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Douglas says, with Apple building a stronger relationship with Blackmagic Design, do you think it'd be feasible for them to work with BMD to build a workaround into macOS similar to what Zoom did to end the ATEM crush once and for all?
Go, Nigel.
I think Blackmagic's absolutely able to do anything it wants and work with whoever it wants. Actually, I think one of the most interesting things about the side issues from the Apple WWDC was the showing of the Blackmagic camera and the talk about Resolve and the integration of those workloads. And I think that was a very positive sign for that and Blackmagic being part of the ecosystem. The challenge with some of the problems with the ATEMs is once you pick the chip you're going with, you're stuck with the chip that you're going with. And maybe the next generation of products will have a different chipset in them or an upgraded chips will go away. But I think Blackmagic has proved that it can do anything once. What none of us really know is where Blackmagic is going and where its focus is, because as a private company, we only get to see what they announce. But I thought it was a really positive step forward that Apple would include them in WDC and that they work together on a project. Because the more Blackmagic stay in that ecosystem, the better it will be for all of us.
Yeah, I think they're the right company for this kind of camera development, really something that's way different, way outside of the, and aiming for that specific market. And I think that what's really interesting is that the mixture of course, and for those watching, this is the stereo camera, stereo video camera, spatial camera that Blackmagic is developing, hopefully by the end of the year. And the interesting thing is that not only are they developing the hardware, the camera, but they are also developing the software to manage that camera. So you now have the ability in Resolve to open those files and work with them. One of the things we're hoping for is that there's enough data coming off the camera. I think there's 4 Ethernet, 10 gig connections, which is actually may seem like a lot of data, but when you actually are trying to do 8K per eye, it's actually not enough to do very much. Like it won't be able to do live 8K per eye, 90 frames a second from even 4 10 gig connections. It would need much, much higher, maybe 2 or 3 times as much as that to get out of there. So those connections would really have to be 100 gig connections or 40 gig connections for it to be able to pull enough data to go live. And then you have to figure out the back end pipeline. So it's good that they're doing those things. I don't know. I think that they chose. I can't believe that they don't understand what happened here, and I believe that they chose their chip poorly, and I don't think that they can change it, because I think if they could change it, there's enough of us talking about it that they would. And so I think that the hardware is burned in. So anything you have now, I think, is going to be what it is. And I think Blackmagic, not Blackmagic, but Zoom fixed it for theirs. It's broken for everything else. It's really funny when I jump into Meet or into Teams, I'm always like, wow, I look really contrasting. like I'm not used to it anymore. So it was interesting that Zoom was able to kind of hack through that. I don't know if Blackmagic could, because it has to be done on the host computer. Next question.
Chad in Toledo is up next. Studio question number 3. He notes, I've learned that the 21 by 21 room, so that's the wrong one, up at the top. Okay, here we go. FYI-Company has a lot.
I think we should do the. Here, let me swap that around. I think we're gonna do these 2. Chad sent 2 in on the QR code.
2, yeah.
So I'm going to cancel this, and we'll do the first one first, and then we'll do the second one.
Studio Q number 3. Is that what I'm heading into?
Yep.
Excellent. I've learned that the 21 by 21 foot room has 2 attached outer offices, very small. Is there a benefit in having a glass control room window installed?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it's definitely useful to have a window, like even a tiny one, so that you can visually see what's happening on your stage, for things that aren't visible on camera. So even a tiny like peep window, so you can look at things. If say a talent has moved around, you can visually check where they are, even if they're off camera. If a gear is being moved around, you can verify that the placement is where you want it to be. Even the tiny window will be helpful.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same place. In my Hay Barn conversion studio, I had a relatively large window, and it took a little bit of effort to build in there because, like in most studios where sound is an issue, you don't want just a single window. You try to get a double pane and put them at a little bit of an angle so you don't get sound transmission. It cost me a lot to put in there, but I can't tell you the number of times we fixed a problem just by being able to visually see the people who are working in the studio and diagnose and fix a problem on the fly. If you're totally remote and don't even have a camera or something like that, you're truly flying blind, and it's just not as comfortable in operating a studio situation.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you approach your production. I think because our productions were so remote, and they were oftentimes people weren't part of it, we stopped developing any windows in our studios. And the reason for that is that it was important for us to not ever lean on the window because we had people coming in remotely. So what we did is we had 4 GoPros in the corners in different places that needed to be where you get the most of it. And of course, you have the camera taps and everything else. And so those would be delivered off-site over Hangouts or Zoom or whatever it was that we were using at the time. But you'd be able to see all those cameras. And what we found was we had, by forcing our local team to live through those windows, because they would have those as monitors, in the control room. So the control room was right next to the studio, but by forcing them to work through there and put those cameras where it made sense for them, they were allowing the off-site teams to see what they needed to see as well. And when we had windows in there, they tend not to pay attention to the cameras as much. And then as a result, the cameras weren't as useful for the off-site crews, which had become half of our crew by 2012. And so we really needed to make sure that we needed to force them to do that. And also it was a huge expense. So usually what happened is that for a corporate one, putting a big window in and then leaning it forward was it was a huge chunk of what I had money for. And I was like, I'm not going to pay for that. I'll just get some cameras. And so that's why we went to that. But we found that lots of little GoPros or we moved eventually to the Blackmagic ones because we could zoom in and out and stuff like that. But the little micro studios. But we found that was a better solution for us than the Windows. But it's we work on a lot of studios that have Windows and they work well. So anyway, next question.
Chad in Toledo is right back again with studio question number 4. FYI-Company has allotted only $50,000 US because we currently use a TV with a built-in camera for when the CEO remotes in to the major networks. They mostly think we don't need a studio. Can someone explain Alex's light grid?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Well, I'm going to let Alex explain his light grid. I'm not going to attempt to do that. I had 2 observations I wanted to make, which then I'll let Alex answer his light grid problem. One is 50,000 your OPEX or your CAPEX? So it may be worth understanding the difference, because if it's OPEX, you get a rental set of opportunity. If it's CAPEX, it's a one-time buying and depreciation. So it may be worth understanding when they say $50,000 what they mean. The other thing, if your CEO is going into major networks with a camera on top of a television, you need to find someone who's able to bravely show him what that looks like. That may be his executive assistant, his EA, his PA, his TA, or some type of A. Because my guess is he's not doing good for the brand if that's what he's doing.
You good, Bill?
Yeah, and for me, I had a studio for a long time. In fact, I will switch to a picture or two and just give you an idea of this was my ceiling in the studio. And I particularly do this because the studio rail system that I had up there allowed me to move all sorts of things like lights around. This is the track for the curtain in the back. You can see that it really adds a lot of flexibility. You can put in things like pantographs to raise or lower lights. And the point of all this is efficiency. You want to be as efficient as possible when you're in the studio. If you need to change something, you don't want to waste time hauling out a ladder, climbing up to the grid, loosening a light, moving it over, coming down, going down the ladder, particularly if you're a single-person operator, and then finding out it's wrong and having to do it all over again to make adjustments. You want to be able to do things like you can with this system in that if I needed to move something, if you look over on the far right little rail there's a long pole, and I could take that, pull the brake off, move it into position, move a light just a couple of degrees in a minute and a half, and it was so much more productive to have a dedicated studio. You have one CEO, maybe that's the same fixed setup all the time, and this isn't as valuable, but that's the point of a studio, is to drive efficiency in your production, particularly when you have a lot of expensive people hanging around.
So not only will I explain the light grid that I use, but I will also explain that I would not do anything we told you to do before in the last question, now that I understand the context of your question. So there is a temptation to try to do more with a studio than you need to at the beginning. And you're going to do what we call spreading too little jam over too much bread. And so if you're trying to do 3 camera shoots or discussions or anything else with $50,000, you'll get everything that's okay, and you'll kind of work it through and everything else. But if I knew that what this was for was a CEO doing remotes and what I'm replacing, I would focus all of my money on that one thing and make sure that that was super successful. You got $50,000. The CEO looks like dynamite. And now you can talk about other things in the future. Just nail the thing that was asked for. Don't try to extend what they're giving you money for into a whole bunch of other things, because again, you don't have the resources to build a great studio at $50,000. You're not going to build a great studio there. So what I would do with if someone gave me $50,000 for the CEO, because that's what this is really for, I would build a nice background, potentially I'd have probably a 75 or 85 inch TV that I could roll in if I wanted to. On one of the walls, I'd make a green screen, there. So if I want to do green, I could just turn the CEO and have them be able to do delivery. I'd have that screen probably sitting in front of that. I'd have curtains running all the way around. So I would have and the reason I'm pretty specific about this because I've built a whole bunch of these. so in people's houses, in CEOs' houses, and in their things. So basically, if you're thinking about your 21 by 21, there's this back area here, and you want that to actually be physical if you can. You're going to shelving or whatever, something that expresses the CEO's experience or whatever. Now you're going to want to make one of these walls typically a green screen, and one of them to be typically white, so that you can do infinite white, and then you can rotate things around a little bit. Then this is here. Then you're going to have a desk. The desk is going to be raising up and down. You're going to also want a chair that does the same thing, so you can kind of move everybody where they need to be. You're going to want a camera on a ped. So the camera can be moved around, and it's going to sit on a pedestal. And this is a thing that you can grab onto something and lift it up and lift it down really quick and easy. So you can get it right to where you want it, to where you want to put it. This screams FR7. So this is one FR7, Sony FR7 to do this. It's a full frame sensor. It's going to be, you can remote control it, because one of the things you want to do is completely remote control the studio, except for the handful of the physical things. So you put an FR7 in here. You want to make sure that you have a ring that goes all the way around here that you can put a curtain in. You want that curtain to be 100% fullness, which means there's twice as much curtain as there is distance. And now you're going to have lots of leafy things. You want to make sure that it's typically tight carpet so you can roll over it, but it will absorb some sound. You'll put sound absorption up on the ceiling to make that work. But I would then still build a grid. I think Bill's grid is great if you can afford it. If it fits inside the budget that you have, you do have some flexibility there. But what I would do typically is I would build this great one with giant light sources for the CEO. And you want to move that CEO. You'll think you want the table back here, but you actually want it kind of in the middle of the room, so that you have a lot. You're going to fall off a lot to the background, so it looks nice and soft. and you'll have some lighting that hits the back end here, but you want to build all of your lighting for all of the setups that you're going to have. So the lighting is not, if you walk into a studio, you see all these lights pointing all these different directions. The reason you do that is so that you're not moving things around. Like the white wall is lit like the white wall, and a person stands in the right place and they're going to look good. Same thing with the green screen, same thing with the background there. And then you have a monitor that you can swing into the place. And inside of a 20 by 20, especially if you've got a couple small rooms, you can make that work. The lights should all be DMX. You have a controller over that. You'll want to have an IFB under that table so that with a controller on it. There's a wide variety of IFB controllers that you want to have there so that you're able to deliver either over Dante. I would do it over Dante, but you can have Dante to that so that he can listen and change his volume. You're going to want a speaker in there so that you can hit a button and have a quote unquote God mic that you can talk to him on if you need to, if something isn't working. But again, I think that's probably closer to what you're looking for. But $50,000 will build that well. Like it will do that job. It'll serve that mission fairly effectively. $50,000 for 3 cameras and a bunch of other things is going to be everything's going to be so. He'll look better if you do what I just pointed out there. He'll look better than most of the people he's on the other side of on broadcast. And that's where a CEO usually wants to be, is looking better than the people that they're talking to. Next question.
Chad is right back from Toledo. This is studio question number 2, actually. The Blackmagic ecosystem should allow me to access proxy files remotely. By remotely, I mean another state. Do I need their cloud servers?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, theoretically, I haven't used Blackmagic Cloud myself, but theoretically it will work well that way, though I would also probably advise looking into Frame.io's camera to cloud system, just because it has a much wider array of products that support it. You can hook up, say, an Atomos recorder that can connect to camera to cloud and upload it through that, or even other cameras like RE cameras, RED cameras, as well as sound devices recorders can upload directly to camera to cloud. So maybe investigate that on top of looking into the Blackmagic ecosystem.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. I've got to implement Apple Business Manager and an MDM solution. Recommendations appreciated, leaning towards Kandji, and he's got a link there.
I'm not familiar with Kandji, so they might be great. Everybody that I know that does this at scale uses Jamf. So this is jamf.com. This is jamf.com. This is at least in all the environments that I'm in, that anywhere where it matters. And I would say that companies at the very highest level that use Apple products use Jamf to do their MDM or work with them closely. There are a lot of ex-Apple folks that are there. They've been doing this for a long time. As it says on their website, 75,000 businesses and schools, but that's the big player. Kandji might be less expensive. I don't know, but I would look at Jamf before I went with anything else. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. Is the Sennheiser EW-DP a good ENG mic for news shoots? And he's got a link there.
Mickey?
Yeah, the EW-DP, I had the opportunity to test a set a year and a half or 2 years ago when they were first available here. I'd say it's really good value for money, same as the rest of the Sennheiser EW line, Evolution line of wireless gear. But for news or generally in situations wherein you don't have the ability to do another take, I would probably consider investing in something with a more robust RF system in it, something with better front end filtering, so that you can guarantee a better chance of capturing the audio wirelessly. And also, I'm not a big fan of production equipment that require you to use a mobile device application, a phone application, or tablet application for you to be able to operate it to its full extent. So, with the EW-DP system, you do need a phone app to configure the transmitters. I generally would shy away from that.
And a quick reminder that if you have questions, you can ask those questions either in Mukana or you can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global and ask those questions there anytime. We'll get to them either today or we'll get to them in the next couple of days as we roll them in. Next question.
Coming in from the QR code system again, A. Barara in Flowery Branch says, I moved to northern Georgia 2 years ago and noticed there's a lot of lightning storms here. What should I purchase for my devices so they don't get fried if hit by lightning?
Nigel.
So the real question here is, what does a lot mean? Is this occasional or like every other day? Because there's a big difference. So clearly you want to put a surge protector. And by the way, most of us put surge protectors on stuff that we really value anyway, and we put power conditioners because we don't really trust the power coming in into our homes. You pick your favorite one. I'm sure everybody has their favorite one. I really like the Wattbox products. I like the Wattbox products that fit in racks and stuff. I think they have some software called Oversee so you can remotely monitor them. I really like that. But clearly for your most valuable things anyway, you should think about surge protectors. And by the way, surge protectors have a limited life on them. Okay, they have parts in them that need replacing. Whatever you do, don't think you can install it and walk away forever, because that doesn't work either. But if you live in a place where there is a lot of lightning protectors, then you should talk to an electrician about a whole home surge protector. You want to stop that getting into the house, not once it's in the house, spreading around and blowing up everything from your television to your toaster. So if there really is a lot and it's really important, try and look for a whole house solution. It's going to be much more expensive, but that's the way to do it. One last thing. If whatever you do, if you really suffer from a lot of lightning strikes and you don't need that equipment to be plugged in when they're happening, set it up so you can quickly unplug. And I don't just mean the power. I mean the Ethernet. I mean anything else that electricity can find a way around your house. You want to make sure it's disconnected when the lightning strikes.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nigel. And I also want to state that proper surge protectors that can protect you from lightning aren't just simple power strips or PDUs with fuses in them, because a fuse doesn't blow fast enough to protect most equipment from lightning strikes. So you want proper surge protection there. Popular brands are Furman, APC, Triplite. You want something that's really designed for surge protection and can react very quickly. On top of this, any copper cabling that comes into your building, you want to have surge protection there, be it cable internet. If you're using cable internet, you want surge protection on that cable coming in. If you still have POTS lines, you want surge protection there. If you have a copper cable or copper Ethernet cable that maybe goes to a shed in the backyard, and especially if it is underground cabling, you'd want surge protection there as well. You can buy affordable Ethernet surge protectors for like $10 to $20. Just make sure it's tied to ground properly. Any means for light current from lightning strikes to come in, you want surge protection there. If you do have, say, that copper cable that goes to some other, outhouse or shed in the backyard, maybe consider switching that to fiber optics, because current will not go through glass. So you get the benefit of possible higher throughput as well as protecting yourself from current going through that.
Go, Bill.
What stopped me when I read this is what happens so that my devices don't get hit if they get hit by lightning. If they get hit by lightning, you're lost. There's nothing between them. Now, we're talking about trying to protect a small house or Office network from the surge that will come down. You know, a lot of these devices, I think, are designed for the brownouts and pulses that are normal in a grid. Lightning is a whole nother ball of wax. That is such a massive amount of energy that is injected into the system instantly that literally, as Nigel said originally, and I'm going to back him up 100%, if you seriously think that a lightning storm is coming towards you, it's like put an air gap in there that is significant. Lightning strikes can even jump 2 or 3 inches of distance across 2 conductors without batting an eye because there is so much energy in there. So literally, if you're at risk of this, work your system so that you can physically disconnect anything that feeds your important equipment with some distance in between there. You know, you look at those power stations, they have huge handles where they put in a foot gap between things just because they know that the potential for getting struck by lightning is there and the energy source is just so massive.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. For macOS automation, how would you compare BetterTouchTool to Keyboard Maestro? One thing I like about BetterTouchTool is that it integrates support for placing windows on specific spaces.
I don't have experience with BetterTouchTool. Pretty much the industry standard is Keyboard Maestro. So, so I think that, and I will say that I wouldn't know about spaces because I just don't use spaces. I just don't. I hate them. So I just wish they didn't exist because they're always popping up when I don't want them to. I can't completely turn them all off, but I would if I could. So I don't know enough about that, but I would say that almost everybody that I know that does this kind of thing is using Keyboard Maestro. I guess I would say everyone that I know is using that one piece of software. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is up next with, why in the world would beelink put a reset button right next to the power button and put a janky power cord on what may be the most powerful mini PC ever? And he's got a link to it.
Insanity. That's I guess I would just say insanity. Next question.
Poor interface design. Peter, next question comes from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Follow-up T20 World Cup question. What if any lessons do you think the USA sports broadcasters have learned about how cricket broadcasting works, especially with how quick and informative to a crowd the decision review system works?
I don't think that U.S. sports broadcasters understand cricket. Like, I just don't think that Americans understand cricket. Like, I don't think it just seems like a really great opportunity to have tea and cake. Like, you know, like it's you know, so like every time I see it, I'm like
ascot racing.
It's like baseball's a good opportunity to have hot dogs and beer. You know, it's like, but every time I see it, they always show people in the audience watching. I'm just like, I don't understand. It just feels like it's going so slow. Go ahead, Nigel. Nigel's going to set us straight. Nigel, of course, is going to set us straight. I knew that I could bait Nigel by just saying things that would get him upset, and then I knew he'd be right in here answering this question. So anyway, Nigel.
So USA beat Pakistan. So that's a great result. USA is currently playing India. You have to have some bizarre television channel in the US to watch it, but you can on YouTube watch the Indian commentary of the game, which is in itself entertaining. Not that I speak much Indian. I do think it's interesting. The world's largest set of cricket grounds is in the US. Most of the games are being played in New York and all over the US. This is the sport of the future. But I have to tell you, I'm sort of with you, Alex. Cricket is fun to play, but can be very boring to watch. But these are 20 over games. The 5-day ones are tough.
I mean, it's like baseball goes slow and it feels like cricket's like hold my beer, you know, and so like let me just because it's just like it takes so long and I just don't understand the point structure. Like I look at it like I don't understand what's going on here and why it's taking so long. You know,
the chess of sports.
Well, I do. You do have to accept that cricket is becoming a much bigger sport with immigration into the US.
It's a huge sport.
Cricket.
It's a huge sport. Like I mean, I agree with you that it's a massive sport. It's just that most Americans don't understand it. I mean, you know, we're learning soccer. Like we're coming around. Like, you know, the soccer's getting bigger and we're coming around and we're understanding that. But the cricket thing is a whole nother layer of I feel like we have to digest soccer first, football. Sorry, and then we can absorb Sword cricket. We got curling down. We totally understand curling now. And I actually get into it. I'll watch curling all day. I find that to be a very viewable sport. Yeah, it's very simple. I understand what the rules are, and it all happens relatively quickly. Nice. Yeah, go ahead.
I think my advice is always watch these games with someone who knows them, because they'll show you stuff to look for and see.
Yeah, we did you're totally right that context is so important. We did about a whole bunch of streams for a professional basketball team, 25 or 26 of these shows that were they have this schedule every other week, they're home or whatever. And so we did these, and we had one of the former players from that team and a social media star that, really is into that team, and the two of them conversing over the game, and that person that used to work for the team didn't feel like they owed the team anything. So they can just say whatever they're going to say. And when they started breaking down basketball, this is what's happening, see how he's blocking, see this play, and we gave them a telestrator with an overhead shot, and an overhead shot, by the way, that all basketball teams should use, which is just, there was this place. It was funny. I scanned the space, right? So I did a scan of the arena. So I said, I want to put a camera up here. And they were like, oh, you can't get a camera up there. And I was like, I think I can, because I had a 3D scan. I knew that there was nothing, that the Jumbotron was just above where my thing is. So I had a perfect frame that was almost straight above the court, that just framed the court. And it was so valuable because you could sit there and talk about, draw out the plays, like you draw out a play, and explain what was happening. And after that, basketball was super fun to watch. When I understood what was happening, and I understood all the in-betweens of what they were doing, and when you listen to someone talk about it, it's so important. That commentary is so important to understand all the theory behind, and all the strategy. Next question.
Moving on to Samuel Nordvik in Norway, and he says some small mixers have high Z inputs that claim to take instrument level and make a DI box redundant. Is this the case, or would you use it as advertised?
Mickey?
Yeah, high Z inputs on smaller mixers, like small desk mixers, can take instrument level directly in. If it's just a short instrument cable run, like say if you have a guitar and you're sitting at your desk and the mixer's at your desk, you can go directly into the high Z input on the mixer. Just know that the high Z inputs and the preamps on those smaller mixers are usually they're good enough to get the job done. They're adequate. They're not essentially say the best sounding circuitry in there. But if you find yourself in a situation where you do need a much longer run, instrument connections are unbalanced connections. So if you need to do a long run, I would go into a DI box so that it turns it into a balanced signal. And you can do that long cable run using a balanced cable as opposed to an unbalanced instrument connection.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas says Insta360 is dropping a new product on June 13th at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in America. What do you think it will be? And he says, Clue, here's a teaser video, and he's got a link there to YouTube.
Nigel?
Yeah, I've been actually looking at investing in an Insta360 camera. So this is an interesting question. And my research shows that the X4 is, I think, dropped at the end of last year. So it's unlikely, I think, they're going to replace that. So assuming it's a consumer-based product, you've got to believe that it's the Go 4 maybe, but it could be a commercial product. But they're really focusing on the size of this thing. And putting it in positions that the sort of Insta Go might work really well. So I have no idea, but I would guess it's the Go 4.
From the demo that they showed, the teaser video, it appears to be a very, very small camera. So, it looks like they're going for the ultimate miniaturization of the camera system. And so my guess is it's probably the size of a DJI. So the DJI, like the mic, it'll probably be that. It'll probably be the size of some small pill that is a 4K sensor. Everything's going to be in focus because that's what will happen with that. But imagine I'm just making this up, but I think that it's probably, you're going to see something that does what a GoPro does at probably half the size. So it'll take out all a lot of stuff that the GoPro had, a better battery. It'll be more compact. It'll have everything will be controlled. There'll be no screen to control it. It'll be all, going to your phone. It will be a very, very small item, and it'll have a lot of ways of attaching it. If you look at I was trying to kind of back up when I looked at the video of it, and I think that you're going to see that they're going to be able to attach it to things, because you can see a lot of POV stuff that they're doing with it as well. So I think it's going to be a very, very tiny camera. My guess is quarter the. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Quarter the size of a GoPro, 4K, delivery solution. And so we'll see if that's what. But if you're asking for a guess, that's my guess. So we'll watch it. Maybe even watch it here. We'll probably open it up because we will have just opened up our pre-show. So we'll all know what it is by the show tomorrow. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Would you use a graphic EQ on studio monitors, or would you use a room correction system like the IK Multimedia's Arc Studio? And he's got a link there.
Mickey?
Yeah, if you're, with all things being equal, and if you're just simply adjusting EQ, I'd rather do it at the monitors compared to adding an additional box in your monitoring chain. Because this box adds yet another A to D and D to A conversion in there. So not taking into account any timing correction that it may do, I would rather do it at the monitor side so that no matter what my source would be, I can plug directly into the monitors or into my monitor controller without some additional box in the pipeline.
Next question.
Next one comes from John California in Heflin, Alabama. When playing a video on OBS, I'm not hearing the sound coming from the speakers on my MacBook Pro. When I go into the main setting, I don't see my MacBook Pro listed. What do I need to do to be able to monitor the sound coming from the video?
Go ahead, Mickey.
So within OBS, this is the audio settings in OBS. Make sure you are looking at the monitoring device drop down, because the speakers will not show up in your global audio devices. You want to look at your monitoring device, and like say, for example, here I have my Mac Studio speakers as something I can select here.
Hello?
Are you still there?
Hopefully.
We lost Mickey.
Oh, yeah, he dropped out.
He's there. Oh, we can hear you. Oh, couldn't hear you.
Oh, were you guys not hearing me earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Within OBS, this is OBS's audio settings. So, make sure that you are looking at the monitoring device drop down instead of the global audio devices at the top. Make sure you're looking at the monitoring device here. And if we look here, we can see the Mac Studio speakers.
Well, we lost you again. Oh, there we go. I can hear your mouse. Can't hear yours.
Hey,
maybe that's
there. We go. When we're playing with audio,
and monitoring devices, you want to look at monitoring devices essentially.
That's great. Very good. Next question.
A Hanawahi Black Bear Marshall in the Oahe Nation says, how do we export these models in HAP or other formats so that they can be used as elements in media servers like Disguise or Pandora, or used with stage precision? Really want to use this for some of our large live events, but it has to work with our gear.
Yeah, I think that there's a variety of exporters for HAP. Typically, what you're going to do is you're going to render a lot of what you're doing out as a usually some kind of uncompressed format or very low compressed format. You can do that with and without alpha channels, I believe, to convert to HAP. But I think that there are a variety. One of the simple transcoding ones is the AVF batch exporter, but you're not going to be able to do anything from any of your core applications. And so what you'll need to do but what you want to do as you render those is to render them in a very high quality codec. And then you're going to hand them to something like AVF batch exporter or other things to convert from those images to the HAP format that you need. HAP is used by Disguise I think Disguise is the only thing I know of that uses HAP. I would say that HAP Disguise is a pretty specialized solution, for a lot of those things. A lot of folks use them. There's a lot of solutions there. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas says lots of Shure MV7 MOTIV app users are finding upgrading to the new MOTIV Mix to be a bit janky. Anyone else have issues on the Mac MOTIV Mix install?
I haven't, I have the MV7s and we just plug them in. So we don't use them. We're looking at getting more in depth with this, with using MOTIV Mix as we go into we're getting ready to convert to MV7 Pluses. So we are looking at that, but I've opened it and played with it and it wasn't a problem, but I haven't done a lot of configuration inside of it. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida says, I'd like to publicly thank John Wallace for his help yesterday with iPhone Mic Mode and Riverside. Standard mode resolved the issue and saved the session.
Excellent. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Is comms singular or plural, or are comms plural or singular?
Go ahead, Bill.
There are a ton of words that are both singular and plural at the same time. As a matter of fact, I did a quick search on that, and it turns out that there's bunches that you probably don't think about every day. Things like aircraft, and both dungaree and jeans, luggage, spacecraft. There's tons of words that function both as singular and plural at the same time. It's just part of the English language, which is quirky sometimes.
Next question.
Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas says, Alex recommended a pedestal camera support on an executive studio. Can we discuss specific brands and products, the range of prices and features?
There's a lot of ranges. For this specific thing, I would probably go with the least expensive PEDs. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need to spend a lot of money on this. Hot pods would also be possible. So Sackler makes a hot pod. A hot pod would probably do most of what you need a hot pod on wheels. So actually what I had in my last studio until I got PEDs. Most of us have bought PEDs used unless we're a broadcaster. So there's a lot of PEDs out there. They're mechanical. If they're in relatively good condition for a couple $1,000s, you can get a big PED to do what you need it to do. But Vinton makes some PEDs that are in kind of the $5,000 to $7,000 range. I think Prompter people make one just for what they're doing, which are in the $4,000 or $5,000 range. But you can see there'll be, like on eBay, you'll see PEDs for $1,500 or $2,000, and a lot of them are going to be in good enough condition to do what you need it to do, and they're going to be beefy because a lot of broadcasters let these go. And so they're I don't know if I'd buy a new one. They can get up to, if you get a motorized PED. So if you go to a broadcaster, those broadcasters are using these and they're pre-programmed for positions. And so these are like $80,000 per PED. So if you see these really expensive ones, that's because they've got wheels in them and they put them on a flat surface and they go to wherever you want them to go and everything else. But there's a lot of mechanical ones that are going to be the $7,000 or $8,000 range new. And so you can definitely save money on them. Hot pods on wheels would do most of what you need to do. It's not quite as pretty as the PED. The PED has this nice, I'll just pull up I just did a quick search, so you'll just, let's see here. So if you look at these are kind of these hot pods. They have these little, you'll see these little wheels that you can kind of grab onto and just pop them up and move them up and down. And it just makes it, when you're trying to make those adjustments quickly, it's really nice. And when you have an executive in the room, everything moving very quickly is really important. Also, remember that you're most likely going to have a teleprompter sitting on top of that hot pod. So it does need to be able to handle a certain amount of weight. So you're going to want to have a teleprompter option, possibly some monitoring options, all that stuff. So you are going to need some kind of head and some kind of tripod that can handle probably in the vicinity of 35 pounds. And so that's what you're going to be looking at to make that work. And again, if you get that right, it's going to be very smooth. It's going to work well, and your executive is going to be happy with it. Yeah, go, Bill.
Yeah, the big division for me was always, are you doing a manual crank up kind of pedestal, or are you doing something that is either pneumatic or perhaps other assisted? Alex was talking about the entirely electric ones that you can just push a button and they go up and down smoothly, and the range of adjustment. Hot pods are fabulous. They only have 6 or 8 inches. Sometimes that's easily enough. If you start out in the right zone, that'll adjust from somebody who's 5'6" to somebody who's 6'2" easily with that kind of a rig if it's set up right to begin with. The ones in the studio can literally go much greater ranges, and as he said, with the big Tonight Show kind of cameras, they're gigantic and entirely smooth, so you can do live pedestal adjustments while they're on air. That's much harder with any of the lower cost ones.
Next question.
Next question comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Ulanzi, Neewer, Smallrig all make quick releases for cameras on tripods. What do you recommend in a quick release for a Sony ZV-E10, iPhone 15 Pro Max, and Samsung S24 Ultra so they all interchange?
No, the ones I'd get them all. I'd get the same one, so I'd get the same ones for all of them. That'd be step one. I mean, here you can obviously you can have a Swiss Arca mount on everything, so that's the style. Another one to look at if you're not going to put it straight on, if you're putting on rigs, NATO mounts or something that a lot of people are really excited, that like to use. I'm kind of moving a lot of things, but that's mostly an accessory solution. But the Swiss Arcas are pretty popular in bed. It's not so much what type of who's making it, but that it follows that format. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. So for me, I have 3 or 4 different systems, and one of them is for regular sized tripods. One of them is for the smaller like monopods that I use. And then I have a third one, which is for my phone, and each of them are different. On my phone stuff, I tend to use these things called Hawk locks that come from Smallrig because they're incredibly small. They're really stable, and my entire iPhone system runs off those Hawk locks. When I move up on the bigger tripods, I tend to go with a particular Manfrotto plate because I just gathered a whole bunch of them when I was starting out. They're still solid. And so all my tripod heads from the past all work with those. And then there's a midline where I have something that falls in between the cracks, and I use a different plate on them. What you want to make sure of is, first of all, you can learn the system so you don't have to look at it, because you're often saying, I've got to switch this camera out for that, or I have to switch this light out for that. You want it to kind of be mentally, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to have to fiddle with rocking the plate back and forth to get it in place. And the other thing that I would pay attention to is if you're working with larger tripods for heavier cameras, the style of that, the sliding plates, interconnects are very, very useful because you are changing the weight and the balance of the camera as you move it forward and back. So changing from a small battery to a large battery often means you have to adjust that sliding plate an inch or so forward or back. And if you don't have a tripod system where your heads and the mounting and the release all works the way you know, you're going to waste a lot of time fumbling, and you can drop a big camera, which is not a cheap problem.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand, one for Nigel to comment on. I'm going to re-ask, given how good the Cricket DRS system works and even how quick and in AFL, Aussie Rules, similar quick speed, the EPL VAR system and what I've read about how slow baseball equivalents are learnings?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I don't know what most of those acronyms mean, so it's hard for me to answer that, but I'm going to guess the answer. But baseball is best watched live, on the radio, and then on TV. So my best advice to you is buy a hot dog and some Cracker Jack, sit in the stand, or listen to it on the radio, and if you have to, watch it on TV.
Next question.
Todd Reynolds is up next from North Adams, Massachusetts. Physical question. Let's say I have a rack tray with a base covered in a very well-sticking Velcro, which I need to remove. Best practices, as in stuck.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd say I don't know how much time you've spent on trying to remove it already, but I'd buy another rack shelf for like $20 or $30 and call this existing rack shelf your Velcro rack shelf, and the new one for your new use case.
We rack stuff up with gaff tape. We call it gaff racking. You set them all down. You put gaff tape down, and it's called a gaff rack. Anyway, go ahead, Bill.
2 products you want to have around in your closet. Both of them are a little bit dangerous, so watch out. Goo Gone actually is not. That's kind of an orange-based goop or sticky substance dissolver. The better solution, which is pretty nasty stuff, is called Goof Off, and it's like a Bestine equivalent, and it'll usually totally dissolve any kind of gunky stuff that you have on something. So use it carefully. It'll also remove paint if you leave it on for a long time.
Coming up next, we've got Chris Jellin is going to be here, and we're really excited to have him talk about audio engineering and remote audio engineering. Tomorrow, it's brainstorming day, so Bill's going to be here, and we're going to be talking. Well, all of us will be here, but we're going to be talking about what do you want to talk about on video Thursdays. So come and help us figure out some of those things there. Friday, of course, we're doing Apple repair and distribution. This is really what options are there to purchase and service your Apple products. Terry McAdams and Garrett Cleversley will be talking and answering your questions about all of that. Saturday, of course, is Q&A, and Sunday is introspection. That's really where we ask the questions about why are we doing this and what are we doing, and concerns and ideas and all those other things. If you'd like to be a volunteer, we've got the new volunteer meeting this Saturday. If you're interested in signing up for that, go to officehours.global/volunteer. And if you're interested in supporting what we do here, you can go to officehours.global/donate. We'll appreciate your support to make this better and better every single day. Now, stay tuned. We're going to jump into the second hour.